Y'all come on in, look around. If we can help you, just holler.
How much do you know about this North Dakota protest going on?
I really haven't heard anything about it. Is it the pipeline they're talking about running into Alaska? Or
I think that one was Keystone.
yeah, the Keystone pipeline. Yeah.
It's a similar one to that one. It's about the same length.
Okay.
But instead of going through Canada, that one crossed through Canada.
Uh-huh.
This one goes through 4 states in the U.S. So it starts in North Dakota.
So they're just branching it off then further over into the United States then, the
Right.
pipeline.
They have some wells in North Dakota that likely what happened is it became much more expensive to transport by rail with the fall in oil prices.
Yeah.
So now pipeline is a lot cheaper way
Oh yeah,
to
definitely.
run on. So if they're still going to have reserves and they don't have as much profit to be made, it's oil fields in North Dakota now, and they're wanting to send it eventually to a terminal in Texas. But this pipeline is going to help them get closer to join up with another pipeline headed down to Texas.
Yeah.
The major complications that we're aware of is the pipeline crosses the river twice. It starts on the side of the river that it already needs to be on, and then crosses the river to pick up some other wells, and then it crosses the river again to go back on the other side of the Missouri River. And the water, or the pipeline originally went further north, upstream of Bismarck, but the people of Bismarck complained that it was too dangerous for the drinking supply and the population there. So they moved it to the treaty lands below Bismarck and just upstream of one of the Sioux tribe reservations. It is a lot lower population. Yeah. Sandy wants to be on the video too.
Yeah.
But is there any questions you have for the camp or for the people standing in protest against the pipeline in that area? Anything you want to know more about?
Well, the main thing is who protesting does not use fossil fuel.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Just like these cell phone towers. Everybody don't want a cell phone tower next to their house. Okay, throw your cell phone away. If you're not going to use fossil fuel, park your car. Then complain. Then march. I'm all for, and it can be done, keeping the water clean and safe. Yes, it needs to be. But it can be done. And the pipeline should go to all extent to make sure that happens. But the transporting of fuel, either by rail or truck or whichever, I do know, no doubt, pipeline is a whole lot cheaper, more efficient, and much less, the trucks are burning so much fuel. Trains, yes, are a lot cheaper, but trucks, 3 or 4 miles a gallon, probably on a loaded tanker truck, if they're sorry about that.
Yeah.
But trucks use so much fuel, and therefore you'd save on pollution and all the things that goes into making steel to build a new truck, tires, producing them. There again, you're using fossil fuel in all those ways.
Right.
So it's, in my opinion, saving the environment plus economically.
Yeah, so these are some good points. So like when I think about going up, I'm going to be using oil to even go there, and those are important things to consider. I know that some people in the camp are actively doing things without fossil fuel. A few examples for you. They had to deliver the petition to the Army Corps of Engineers about 500 miles away after they got enough signatures. They did it by running relay of different reservations and things. People hand deliver that letter by running. And then they've been using horses significantly in the camp. But they still do use fossil fuel, definitely. And what I wonder, this is something I don't know, is how many people are protesting the use of oil completely, and how many people are protesting something more specific, like the placement of the pipeline and the lack of sensitivity to the reservation.
Yeah, and the environment, the reservation.
Right.
I can understand both points, and I also, I'm a strong believer in researching and developing new alternative sources of fuel and what have you. But until that is developed and comes to an economical way to do it, we're still going to have to rely on the fossil fuel. I'm not against saving the environment. Don't want to be misunderstood at all about that, or coming up with new sources. Because I'm all for developing new sources.
So that is another good question to explore. Is there a way to, because one of the things that's going to drive any transition in the future, most people are driven by what's cheapest, what costs. So is there something that would help people realize the true cost of the current forms of energy that could help, progress or transition to other things? Is there any ideas there?
Once again, here we come, I guess. What I don't like is relying on government support. There could be, alternative motives to make us develop more energy efficient sources. And in my lifetime, I've seen automobiles become a whole lot more energy efficient, just in the last few years. And I think a lot of the reasons we hadn't seen it in the past is because of cost. And two, I think there's a tie between the automotive manufacturers and the oil production. Maybe, I don't know that, but I've always thought to keep the price up. And in my lifetime also, I've seen crude oil be traded on the stock market. It didn't used to be that way. And there again, that's why the price was 25 cents a gallon when I was a teenager, versus I've seen it up to $4.50 a gallon. So it's all about the almighty dollar. Everybody knows that. The old fool out here in the country like I am, I know that. You don't do nothing for free. It's all about the almighty dollar. And that's the same on oil. But yes, I think there's going to be, and I think maybe there could be some help from the government to make alternative sources more available and more reliable and more affordable.
And one other thing I'd like to explore, I was trying to think of a good example in the country, but something like farming practices. A farmer would not willingly give his livestock bad feed that would harm them in the long term. And it's not because there's a tax on feeding your animals bad feed. It's because he's aware of the effects later to feeding them bad feed. So I think you're right, or it's worth considering. It's not necessarily the government's place to make people act with ethics or concern for long-term things. It's natural once a person becomes aware
Yeah.
Of the full impact.
You're right.
And that is not a tax at all. That's just awareness.
Yeah, right.
And it's not forcing. But it still leaves one important question, which is one I've been pondering before going up, is as a civil engineer, environmental engineer. I talked to one of my friends in his understanding of planning out the pipeline. He wants to run the pipeline in the lowest population density place around, because he can contain a spill. The emergency relief effort is going to be less in that situation. Delivering water for 8,000 people in a small town is going to be easier.
Oh, yeah.
So, from his perspective, it makes sense to route it that way. But what I thought about more is, what about a map of who uses the most crude oil products in terms of density? So is it that reservation that uses the most crude oil in North Dakota, or is it more likely capital city that is using the most of that crude oil? And so then the decision gets more unclear. Are we just trying to pass the burden on to the least amount of people of the whole population? Or should the people using the most share their fair portions of the burden? And that's a deeper question I have that was based off of initially hearing this other friend talk about the emergency relief plan. So it's the idea of who should share the most burden, and should there be sensitivity to people that try to be environmentalists as a culture, or and I don't want to turn into my discussion right now, but another thing I thought about, and this is real special. I think in a way this is helping explain some of why I'm interested in going up. There's been a request for letters from people of other First People tribes, and also anyone in the world that supports at least the symbolic act of this protest. Not necessarily against all oil, maybe against some of these other things. So there was a special letter from Wales, which is something we wouldn't even think of, but this is our ancestors being part of the Celtic nations, which Ireland is just the same, part of the Celtic nation. They talk about many programs that they've had to deal with to support London, the capital of UK. And they talk about they had to build a water reservoir so that London could have drinking water, and they have to have a nuclear power plant in their countryside because it's too dangerous to put it in London, even though London uses all the electricity of that power plant. So their low population density makes them a target in some ways.
Yeah.
So they sent a letter just the same, saying that as a Celtic nation, that they stand with at least some of this symbolic protest.
Yeah.
Because they share it, and that's
well. I see, I see that. I see both sides, and I see why they want to say place a nuclear plant in a less populated area, because if there were an accident, wouldn't be as many victims. And I see what they're saying. Okay, we're paying the price. I see it both ways. I can see that. Yeah. And I can see the pipeline, they're wanting to run it through less populated areas, maybe not so much as altogether a spill or whatever, but it would get expensive running under so many streets and densely built big buildings and stuff. It would be expensive to run a pipeline in that type of environment versus the countryside. I can see that on the pipeline side. it's I see both issues.
So is there any other questions you would have other than the question on oil consumption of people at the camps?
Well, no, I guess that's really all I've got to question the protesters,
So in some ways you think you understand
yeah.
or could support portions of the...
Yeah, I can see their point. Why, if you know me very well, I love to camp and fish and such, and I'm all for supporting environmental, controlling the environment. But I know man is at the top of the chain, and we've got to do sometimes what we have to do, but I want to do it in a cleaner way as we can do it naturally. I have, of course, 8 grandkids, and, I want them to have a sustainable future in the world, naturally.